In the middle of the dense trees, surrounded by darkness, Ethan Carter held the flashlight steady, illuminating the muddy path in front of him. His heart was pounding in his chest. The icy wind whipped through his thin jacket, and the sound of branches snapping around him made his mind imagine eyes hidden in the darkness. What the hell was he doing there? The 32-year-old archaeologist, who specialized in extinct indigenous cultures, had never believed in tribal legends. But something had brought him to this place. And it wasn't just his academic curiosity. 4 disappearances in less than 2 months in the Montana wilderness made his instincts scream. 2 ranchers, an experienced hunter and, strangest of all, a veteran police officer from the local reservation. No trace, no clues, just the report from old-timers about an unexplained whistling coming from the forest on the nights before the disappearances. And now, he was hearing the same sound. And before we continue with this intriguing story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps us bring you more content like this. Now, let's get back to the story. Ethan took a deep breath. He turned back, looking at his research partner, Dr. Lucas Reynolds, a skeptical anthropologist 10 years older than him. "Are you listening to this?" Ethan asked in a whisper. Lucas, who was adjusting the thermal camera on the tripod, didn't seem impressed. "It's probably a nocturnal bird, or the wind between the branches. You know how the human mind loves to associate patterns with strange sounds." But Ethan wasn't convinced. That whistling wasn't natural. It had a rhythm, a melody, almost hypnotic. Then something unexpected happened. The whistling stopped, and the whole forest was plunged into absolute silence. Not a cricket, not a leaf moving, just a suffocating emptiness, as if nature itself were holding its breath. Ethan felt a shiver run up his spine. He knew, by instinct, by fear, or by something much more primal, that something was there, watching them. It was then that Lucas shouted. Ethan turned in time to see his friend being dragged into the darkness. The flashlight flickered in his hand. He ran to where Lucas had been a second before, but there was no one else there. Only the footprints that abruptly disappeared into the mud, as if the anthropologist had been pulled up. Above, in the cloud-covered sky, a colossal shadow loomed between the trees. And then the whistling started again. Ethan knew he was lost. The whistling seemed to be coming from everywhere. Ethan felt his heart beating in his throat. The flickering beam of the flashlight illuminated the churned-up mud where Lucas had been seconds before. No sign of him. No trail to indicate where he had been taken. It was as if the forest had swallowed him up. The colossal shadow that hung over the trees disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. The whistling persisted, but now it was more distant, echoing between the twisted trunks. Ethan knew he had to get out of there. Now, he began to run. The blackness of the forest seemed to close in around him, branch after branch, leaves slashing at his face, the sound of his own breathing louder than it should have been. Each step echoed in the damp mud, and the feeling of being watched only increased. Then something moved to his right. A short, agile figure stepped through the vegetation. Ethan turned his flashlight in the direction of the movement and saw a pair of eyes staring at him in the darkness. "Hey!" he shouted, panting. The figure hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. The light revealed an elderly man wearing worn-out clothes with a weather-beaten face and a frightened look on his face. You heard, didn't you?" The old man's hoarse voice trembled. "Yes," Ethan approached. "My friend, he's gone. We need to call for help." The old man shook his head quickly. "There is no help for those who are taken." The archaeologist felt a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean? What's going on here?" The man hesitated, looking sideways as if he feared something was listening. "Come with me. Now, before he comes back." Ethan had no choice. He followed the old man into the forest, his feet sinking into the soggy ground. The path was almost imperceptible, but the man seemed to know it by heart. They walked for a few minutes until they came to a small wooden hut hidden among the trees. As soon as they entered, the old man locked the door and switched off the lamp. "Keep quiet." The archaeologist tried to control his breathing. The place was small, full of ancient objects, animal skins hanging on the walls, and tribal designs carved into the wood. In the center of the room, a small fire was still smoking, illuminating the figure of the old man. "Do you know what's going on?" Ethan asked, unable to contain his anxiety. The man nodded slowly. "You came after the legends, didn't you? The story of the whistle." Ethan froze. "Do you know what this thing is?" The old man stared into the flame for a few seconds before answering. "La serpiente alada," the winged serpent. Ethan felt the hairs on his arms stand on end. "Are you talking about a myth?" "It's not a myth." The old man's voice sounded grim. "It's real. And now that you've heard the whistle, he knows you're here." A shiver ran through Ethan's body. "But what is he?" The man took a deep breath and began to count. Decades ago, this forest was the territory of an almost forgotten indigenous tribe, the Apsayaluki. They spoke of a being that lived in the shadows of the oldest trees, a creature that only hunted at night. It glided through the sky unseen, moving like a ghost, its wings similar to those of a giant bat, but with a long, scaly body like that of a giant snake. The worst thing, however, was the sound it made before attacking. "The hiss," Ethan whispered. The old man nodded. "It uses the hiss to hypnotize its prey. The sound enters its mind, confuses its senses, until, when it stops whistling, it's too late." Ethan swallowed. "What if we've already heard it?" The old man bowed his head. "Then it's only a matter of time." A heavy silence hung between them. Ethan felt a knot in his stomach. Lucas had been taken. Was he still alive? Was there a way to stop him? Before he could ask, something interrupted them. "OCD, OCD, OCD." Someone or something knocked on the door. The old man paled. He held his breath. "OCD, OCD, OCD," this time stronger. And then, in the darkness outside, the whistling began again. Ethan knew that the winged serpent had found them. "OCD, OCD, OCD." The knocks on the door got louder. The old man cowered in a dark corner of the hut, his eyes wide. Ethan felt his heart racing, each beat sounding like thunder in his chest. Then the whistling stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan's mind whirled. If the creature attacked when the whistling stopped, then crash! The door exploded inwards as if it had been hit by a hurricane. The cold wind invaded the small room, extinguishing the flames of the fire. Ethan was thrown backwards by the impact, crashing into the wooden wall. In the middle of the destroyed entrance, the colossal shadow loomed against the darkness. For a split second, Ethan saw the impossible. The thing slithered into the hut like a snake. Its scaly skin reflected the weak moonlight, a greenish, damp glow. Membranous wings rose on its back, folding like those of a giant bat. But the worst thing was its face long, with no visible eyes, just a mouthful of sharp fangs that opened slowly. Then Ethan felt something change in his mind. It was as if his body began to weaken, his thoughts becoming confused. His body no longer obeyed. He was being hypnotized. The old man's voice sounded in the background, almost a whisper. "Don't look at him. Close your eyes." With an immense effort, Ethan turned his face away and squeezed his eyes shut tightly. His body was still shaking, but the fog in his mind had subsided somewhat. The old man wasn't as lucky. When Ethan opened his eyes, the old man was still, motionless, his eyes fixed on the creature, hypnotized. Then, in an impossibly fast movement, the winged serpent shot forward and the old man disappeared. There was no scream, there was no resistance, just the sound of splintering wood and the deadly silence that followed. Ethan could barely breathe. The creature slithered around the hut, the putrid smell of its skin filling the air. It was still there. He needed to get away. Now, slowly, quietly, Ethan crawled across the floor, sneaking towards an old cupboard. Seconds seemed like hours. He barely blinked, fear paralyzing his muscles. The thing moved around the room, its body dragging on the wooden floor. He could smell it. Dense, rotten. And then, in a second of insane courage, Ethan jumped. He pushed the cabinet against the creature and ran for the shattered door. He heard a deafening roar behind him, but he didn't look back. He ran. He left the hut and plunged into the dark forest, his feet sinking into the mud. Branches scratched his face. The biting wind made his skin sting. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to keep going. The whistling came again, low, distant, but getting closer and closer. Ethan tripped over a root and fell to his knees. Gasping, he turned his head back. High above, jagged against the cloudy sky, the winged serpent hovered in the air. The hissing stopped, and then it dived towards him. Ethan closed his eyes, waiting for the impact, but before he could feel its fangs, bam! A gunshot echoed through the forest. The creature roared and dodged at the last second. Ethan opened his eyes in time to see the winged serpent twisting in the air, its wings beating hard. A second shot cut through the night, and the creature let out a squeal of pain before shooting off into the darkness of the forest. Stunned, Ethan looked in the direction of the shot. Between the shadows, holding a hunting rifle, a woman with dark hair and a serious expression emerged from the vegetation. She looked at him and spoke in a firm voice. "Get up. If you want to live, come with me." Ethan didn't think twice. Still out of breath, he got up and followed the stranger, disappearing with her into the forest. Behind them, high up in the trees, the whistling began again. The whistling sounded further and further away, but Ethan knew he wasn't safe. The woman was walking fast through the forest, holding her rifle steady. Ethan tried to keep up with her, his body exhausted and his lungs burning. Questions raged in his mind. Who was she? How did he know about the creature? After a few minutes of intense walking, they reached an underground bunker hidden among the trees. The woman opened the rusty metal door and pushed him inside. As soon as she closed the entrance behind them, she lit a flashlight, revealing the cramped and cold interior of the shelter. Weapons, maps, and survival equipment were scattered around. Ethan caught his breath, leaning against a wall. "Who the hell are you?" The woman didn't answer straight away. She picked up an old radio and turned the knobs, trying to tune into something. Static sound, no signal. "Damn," she muttered, irritated. Then, finally, she looked at Ethan. "My name is Olivia Parker, and I'm the only person who can help you get out of this forest alive." Ethan blinked, still trying to process everything. "You shot that thing, but how did you know it would be there?" Olivia crossed her arms. "Because I've been hunting that thing for years." Ethan felt a chill. "What do you mean?" The woman sighed and pointed to a large map affixed to the wall. It was covered in red markings and scribbled notes. Ethan approached it and noticed the names of missing people, all on the outskirts of the forest. For decades, people have been disappearing without a trace in this region, Olivia explained. Always at night, always after someone hears the whistle. Ethan swallowed. "So the winged serpent is real?" Olivia nodded. "Yes, and she's hunting you now." The silence between them was heavy. Ethan felt the adrenaline rush through his body again. "My friend, Lucas," he began, his voice breaking. "I need to find him." Olivia hesitated. "If he's been taken, he's gone." Ethan clenched his fists. "I can't accept that." The huntress stared at him for a moment, assessing his determination. Then she picked up a notebook and threw it on the table. "Read this." Ethan opened the diary. The pages were covered with notes about the creature, detailed descriptions, studies, old accounts. But one passage in particular caught his eye. The whistle is not just a call. It prepares the victim. It enters the mind, disorients, weakens. If someone has already heard the whistle, they are marked. The creature will come back to finish what it started. Ethan felt a chill. I've heard the whistle." Olivia picked up the rifle and checked the ammunition. "So we're running out of time." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. "Is there any way to stop her?" The huntress picked up an old Indian book and flipped through the pages. The Apsaluk spoke of a banishing ritual. a way of sealing the winged serpent so that it could never hunt again. But it was never completed because the tribe was massacred before it was finished. Ethan's eyes widened. Massacred by whom? Olivia looked at him. By the people who freed the creature. The shock hit Ethan like a punch in the gut. Are you saying that someone brought this thing on purpose? The huntress threw an old newspaper on the table. Ethan read the yellowed headline. Secret military expedition in indigenous territory. Government denies involvement. He felt his blood run cold. The army? Olivia snorted. During the Second World War, a military team was sent to explore this forest. They were after something. Something that the Apsayluk protected. But when they excavated the tribe's sacred ground, they released what was buried there. Ethan took a deep breath. And now, this thing is loose. Yes. And if we don't finish it off, it's going to keep hunting. A heavy silence overtook the shelter. Ethan felt the weight of the decision on his back. He could run away and try to survive, or he could face the winged serpent and finish what the Apsaluki had started. His gaze met Olivia's. How do we do the ritual? She smiled sideways. I was hoping you'd ask that. Olivia picked up a bag and tossed it to Ethan. Get some ammunition. We're going to hunt a monster. Outside, the whistling began again. The whistling echoed through the forest. Ethan and Olivia were kneeling on the damp ground, finishing drawing the tribal symbol with the red powder the huntress had brought. It was the basis of the banishing ritual, a sacred code left by the Apsaluki before they were wiped out. The forest was filled with an oppressive silence. The winged serpent knew what they were trying to do, and it wouldn't let up. Olivia finished the last strokes and stood up. The wind blew hard, scattering the dry leaves on the ground. It was time to begin. As soon as the ritual begins, the creature will attack us. Olivia adjusted the strap of her rifle and looked at Ethan. You hold the position while I recite the words. Ethan held tightly to the flashlight and knife Olivia had given him. What if she catches me? The huntress gave him a dark look. Then there's no more ritual. The archaeologist felt a chill, but there was no turning back. He couldn't fail. Olivia took out an old leather scroll and opened it. Her gaze roamed over the ancient verses, and then she began to chant the words of the ritual. The effect was instantaneous. The forest shook. The whistling ceased at once. And then, high in the trees, she appeared. The winged serpent plunged from the sky like a bolt of black lightning. Its membranous wings opened, and its body descended with absurd speed. Ethan jumped to the side at the last second. The creature hit the ground with a devastating impact, scattering mud and leaves everywhere. Its scaly body squirmed, its mouth opening in a terrifying roar. Ethan stood up quickly, his heart racing. Olivia continued to chant, her voice loud and steady, even as the creature turned towards them. The winged serpent advanced. Ethan pulled out the revolver Olivia had given him and fired twice. The shots hit the creature in the chest, but the bullets bounced off its scales like metal. The thing let out a roar of rage, and with a swift flick of its tail, threw Ethan away. He fell hard to the ground, feeling the pain radiate through his body. The world spun around him, but he saw it. The creature didn't cross the ritual circle. The red dust on the ground glowed faintly in the moonlight. It was as if there was an invisible barrier preventing the winged serpent from approaching Olivia. The huntress noticed this too and continued the ritual even louder. The creature went mad. It writhed, roaring, striking the ground with its massive tail, tearing trees out of the ground. Its wings opened and closed in violent spasms. Ethan, still dizzy, crawled to a rock and supported himself. The ritual was working. The winged serpent was being banished. But then, something went wrong. The wind blew even harder. The glow in the circle began to flicker, and Olivia stopped reciting. "No, no," she screamed. Ethan looked at her and saw the horror on her face. The red powder was fading. "She's breaking the ritual," Olivia shouted. Ethan felt the adrenaline take over. If the ritual failed, they would be dead. He looked down at the ground and noticed that the creature, while struggling, had undone part of the circle with its tail. The seal was no longer complete, and without it, the winged serpent could not be banished. "Say the words," Ethan shouted at Olivia. "It's no use without the full circle," she retorted. Ethan felt despair take over. The monster was recovering. Its wings spread again, and it prepared to attack Olivia. He had to act. Without thinking, Ethan jumped on the creature. He grabbed the nearest scale and plunged the knife in with all his might. The blade pierced a weak spot between the scales, and the winged serpent roared in pain, shaking violently. Ethan held on as best he could, but he knew he didn't have much time. "Finish the ritual!" he shouted. Olivia hesitated for a second, but then her gaze steadied. She took the creature's blood in her fingertips and completed the circle on the floor. Then she recited the last words of the chant. The winged serpent let out a deafening roar. Its body glowed red, its scales twitching as if they were burning from the inside. Ethan was thrown backwards and fell to the ground, stunned. The creature began to dissolve in the air, sucked up by an invisible force. The ritual was working. The wind intensified, and a vortex of shadows enveloped the winged serpent. And then, with one last roar, it disappeared. Silence fell over the forest. The only thing left was the black dust where the creature had been. Ethan, out of breath, looked at Olivia. She was trembling, still holding the parchment. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. They had won. The nightmare was over. 3 months had passed since the confrontation in the Montana forest. Ethan Carter was sitting on the sofa in his small apartment in New York, sipping coffee slowly while reading the newspapers. The comforting warmth of the drink contrasted with the cold feeling that still inhabited his chest from that night. His life had changed drastically since then. He had temporarily given up field archaeology to devote himself to teaching and research. Despite this, the memory of that night remained vivid, haunting him in constant nightmares. The winged serpent had not appeared again. No whistling, no news of new disappearances in the region. But Ethan still had doubts. He still felt that disquieting chill when he remembered the last moment in the forest. The phone rang suddenly, making him jump with fright. "Hello, Ethan, it's me." Olivia Parker's firm voice brought some relief. "Hi, Olivia, how are you?" She took a deep breath before answering. "We need to talk. Can we talk in person?" An hour later, Ethan was sitting in a discreet cafe near Central Park, waiting for Olivia. When she came in, Ethan noticed how different she looked. There was tiredness on her face, but also a steely determination that hadn't disappeared. "Thank you for coming," she greeted, taking a seat opposite him. "I didn't think I'd see you again," Ethan smiled discreetly. "I thought you'd moved on by now." Olivia shook her head slowly. "I've tried to move on, but some things just won't leave my mind. And I don't think yours either." Ethan became serious. "Have you heard anything? Any new news?" "Ethan..." She hesitated, taking an old envelope out of her handbag and slowly placing it on the table. "I received this yesterday." With trembling hands, Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. His heart raced violently. In the image, a man was standing on the edge of a Montana forest, looking directly at the camera. It was Lucas Reynolds. "This can't be," Ethan whispered. "The photo is recent, a date ago," Olivia said softly. "He's alive, Ethan." An avalanche of questions swept through Ethan's mind. He felt as if everything he had experienced that night was coming back in full force. "Where did you get this?" Ethan asked, breathing hard. "I don't know. It arrived in the mail with no sender, no explanation, just this photo and a note." She took a small folded piece of paper out of the envelope and handed it to Ethan. He carefully unfolded it, revealing a short, handwritten sentence. "He's waiting for you." Ethan felt his throat close up. "Him? Who? Lucas?" Olivia hesitated, her voice sounding tense and low. "I don't think it's Lucas, Ethan." The archaeologist felt a sharp chill run up his spine, remembering the whistle he had heard at that last moment. "Do you think the ritual didn't work, Olivia?" She stared at him deeply, her gaze conveying fear and concern. "I think maybe it's never completely over. Maybe we just delayed something inevitable." The silence between them weighed like lead. After a few seconds, Ethan regained his voice. "If Lucas is alive, I need to go after him. I need to understand what really happened there." "I thought you'd say that," she replied with a slight smile. "And that's why I came here. I can't let you go alone." Ethan looked into her eyes, finding their trust and a silent connection built in the middle of that terrible night. "Are you ready to come back?" "I don't know if anyone is ready for that," Olivia admitted. "But we don't have a choice." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling an unexpected determination rise up inside him. "Then let's go back to Montana. Let's find Lucas and end this for good." Olivia nodded slowly. Just then, outside the cafe, the wind blew stronger, making the trees in the park sway gently. And for a brief, almost imperceptible instant, a distant whistle echoed through the air. Ethan and Olivia left the cafe in silence, walking side by side through the busy streets of New York. The weight of the decision fell on them like an invisible shadow, but they both knew they couldn't ignore the call. The forest awaited them. The photo of Lucas burned in Ethan's mind. If he was still alive, where had he been all that time? And more importantly, was he still the same? On the horizon, the sky was beginning to darken with the arrival of night. The cold wind swept down the street, and Ethan felt a shiver run up his spine. This time, he couldn't tell if it was just the weather or if something was watching. 3 weeks later, Ethan and Olivia returned to the Montana forest. They walked the dark trails, retraced every step of that terrifying night, and arrived at the exact spot where the winged serpent had been sealed. But Lucas wasn't there. Nothing was there. The forest seemed empty, as if it had never been the scene of anything supernatural. The ritual seal was still intact, and the creature's ashes had blown away in the wind. The photo they received? A fake. There was no trace of Lucas, no record of his existence in the police archives. It was as if he had never existed. Ethan and Olivia stood there for a long time, staring at the silent clearing, waiting for something that wouldn't come. In the end, there was nothing left to find. With no other choice, they left and never came back. The winged serpent had been sealed forever, and this time there would be no more whistling in the forest. What did you think of this outcome? Leave your opinion in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like to support our work. See you in the next video.